And good afternoon. It's 12 o'clock noon in the Eastern time zone. And no matter what time zone you happen to be in, welcome to the Sports Wagering Zone. I'm Chris Pardo. We're coming to you live from Charlotte, North Carolina on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network, as well as most of your major podcast platforms as well. You might be listening on Amazon Music Podcasts, or perhaps Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, or Google, whichever one you're listening to. Thank you very much for listening. Just want to let you know we totally appreciate you listening to the show. We got a big show on for today, and of course, as usual, we still got the NBA championships coming up. We're 3 games on tap for tonight. We're going to take a look at 3 games that are going to be played, and of course take a look and see how the line movement is going in those games, as well as in which direction the pros are going. Of course, it's the Knicks against the Hawks, you got Brooklyn against Boston, and you got the Clippers against the Dallas Mavericks. We're also going to take a look at 4 baseball games today, and once again, limited time constrictions. We're not going to go into detail as we normally do with our picks that we get from the pros as far as baseball is concerned, but we do have 4 picks on tap: the Giants against the Dodgers, the Marlins against the Red Sox, the Braves against the Mets, and the Cards against the Arizona Diamondbacks. So that's on the schedule for today as well. And I've been getting a lot of emails lately because we happened to mention the Zigzag Theory, or Zigzag, about a week ago, maybe a few days ago, late in the week, or early in the week, actually, early in the week, because we're late in the week right now. So got a lot of emails saying, what's this Zigzag Theory? So I'm going to do my best to try to explain that to you during the show today. So along with all other things we have might come up in the meantime, that's pretty well what we're going to be talking about today. And as usual, as if you listened to the show before, we usually start off the show by letting you know what happened yesterday as far as betting statistics, data is pertaining to games in the 3 major sports for yesterday. We're talking about the National Hockey League, the NBA, and Major League Baseball, of course. So starting with the National Hockey League, the favorites and the underdogs, once again, they split 1-1. Dogs doing pretty good as far as the playoffs are concerned. Had a rough regular season, as we've mentioned before. The Hurricanes were a -145 on the money line. They beat the Predators 4-3 in overtime, while the Canadiens, a +200, beat the Maple Leafs 4-3. Now, the favorites, they still lead 22-17 because there were 3 pick'ems. And like we say, we're talking about pick'ems. We're talking about pick'ems out of the Vegas numbers. They may be slightly different wherever you live. The road teams were 2-0 yesterday. That puts the home road thing back to 500 at 21-21. The overs went 2-1, but the unders still lead very little, 22-20, as far as the playoffs are concerned. Meanwhile, over in the NBA, the favorites went 2-1 straight up and against the spread. The Bucks, a 1.5-point favorite against the Heat, and the Lakers, 6.5-point favorites against the Suns. They covered, and of course, there was an upset by the Nuggets at +3-5. They're 3.5-point underdogs against the Blazers. They came out on top in that game as well. So the favorites now lead 13-6 straight up, 11-8 against the spread. Now, according to the Zigzags, yesterday was 0-3. Had 3 plays, no winners against the spread because Miami, Phoenix, and Portland all lost, falling to 4-7 against the spread if you were following that Zigzag Theory, which again I will explain once we get going. The unders went 2-1 yesterday. The overs still lead, but very slightly, 10-9 for the playoffs. Meanwhile, over in Major League Baseball, the favorites, they went 11-4. You had upsets by the Blue Jays, a plus 102 against the Yankees in game one. The Brewers were plus 102 against the Padres. The Phillies, a plus 129 against the Marlins. And the Reds, a plus 115 against the Nationals. The favorites widened their lead to 403 to 315, which is 56.1%. Because he had 25 picks in there as well. The unders went 9-4-2 yesterday, increased the slim lead to 363 to 355 for the season. So that's a recap of the three major sporting events for yesterday: baseball, basketball, and hockey. So I hope you did pretty good yesterday, because today's another day. It's the end of the week. It's Friday. And of course, again, like I said, we're going to be talking about the three basketball games on tap for tonight, as well as four baseball games we're going to look at real quickly, kind of give you the thoughts on those games. And of course, we're going to go into explaining that Zigzag Theory, try to do the best I can to try to let you know what that's all about. But in the meantime, we're going to take our first break. And as usual, we do take 3 breaks within the show. They all last about a minute each. So let's get started with that, because when we come back, it'll be NBA time. We're going to be talking about basketball and the playoffs. So let's take that break. And just a reminder, we will. Yes, we will. We'll be back in 60 seconds. And welcome back. Welcome back to the Sports Wagering Zone. I'm Chris Pardo. Thank you very much for listening. Coming to you live on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network, as well as most of your major platforms for podcasting, such as Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. We're not going to go into all of them. Just let you know that we're on most of the major podcast platforms. We're also on TV back in the East Coast on Blackjack Television. And of course, we're also on milehighradio.com over there in the Colorado area as well. So like we said, today is Friday, and it's Happy Fade the Public Friday. We've talked about this before. In case you haven't heard, today is one of the best days of the week to be a contrarian. Here's the reason. The betting public may not be grinding the sports betting beat every day during the week, because they're working, they don't have time to do it. But tonight, they're hanging with their friends, going out, having some dinner, having some drinks, don't have to wake up early in the morning for work tomorrow. Maybe they just got paid today as well. And because of that, they're more apt to get down on betting some games on Friday, which leads to increased ticket counts as far as the general public is concerned. And of course, once you have that, there's more public bias, and that really helps us as contrarians. And if you've listened to the show before, you know, right here at the Sports Wagering Zone, we are definitely contrarians in the way we figure things out. So that's the story today. Like I said, is Friday, and of course we refer to it as Fade the Public. However the public is going, you want to try to go against them on a day like today. So let's get started with the NBA. 7 o'clock Eastern Time. New York Knicks, Atlanta Hawks. This is game 3. It's the Eastern Conference first round session. The series is tied at 1-1. The Hawks took the opener at Madison Square Garden, 107 to 105. They won that game being 1.5-point road dogs. The Knicks came back in game 2, 101-92, covering as 2-point home favorites. An exciting game to watch. Tonight's game 3, the line opened with the Hawks listed as a 4.5-point home favorite. The public in this particular situation is split. They don't know whether to take the points or to lay them because of the way the Knicks have been playing. However, despite this even type of betting that we've seen the line drop from 4.5 down to 4. Now, remember, keep this in mind. If you're in a vacuum, in a perfect situation, the line shouldn't move at all if the tickets turn out to be even. So we know this move, this downward move from 4.5 to 4, means that the pro money is grabbing the points with the Knicks. And of course, some of them did get in at 4.5. Now it's at 4. The line move is similar to the Nuggets last night, a road dog that moved from being a 4 down to a 3.5-point favorite. And of course, they won the game outright. Now, tonight's total opened at 211, and it hasn't moved as well. The under is 2-0 so far in this series, with the final combined scores of 212 and 193. So with the series tied at 1-1, the Hawks, they're a slight minus 140 favorite to win the series. Those are the odds at BetMGM. And the Knicks, they're a plus 115 dog to win the series. So in this first game, 7 p.m., Knicks against the Hawks. The pros are on the underdog, the New York Knicks, in this game and taking the points. In the meantime, the Nets are playing the Celtics at 8:30. This is game 3 of the Eastern Conference first round as well. The Nets lead this series, though, 2-0. Brooklyn has won, and they've covered as a favorite in both games. They beat Boston 104-93. They were 8-point favorites in that game, and then they blew them out 130 to 108 as a 9-point favorite in game 2. Now it's game 3. It opened with the Nets, 6.5-point road favorite down in Boston. The pros and the general public seems to be united. They're all together on the Nets. We've seen a lot of heavy action. Steam Brooklyn up from 6.5 up to 7.5. So right now, last we've seen, Brooklyn 7.5-point favorite. Now the playoff favorites are 14-11 against the spread so far in this postseason, which comes out to 56%. Now, we've also seen some under money coming in as well, because despite all this betting that's coming in, the majority of them taking the over, the total has also dropped from 228 down to 227. What this means is, once again, you have a reverse line movement on the under. Now, one big factor you got to look at and watch real closely, Kemba Walker. Now, he's questionable because of his injury, his knee injury. So be very careful as to which direction you go, but make sure you pay attention to see whether or not he's going to play. He's a very big cog in that wheel. So the Nets are minus 10,000 on the money line as favorites to win the series. The Celtics, if you're looking for a long shot, they're plus 1,800 to win the series. So in this game between the Brooklyn Nets and the Boston Celtics, the pros are on the Boston Celtics. Now we have one more game to take a look at, and that's the Los Angeles Clippers and the Dallas Mavericks. So we're going to take a look at that, but let's get that second break out of the way, and we'll talk about that game. And also when we come back, we're going to be talking some baseball as well. We have 4 games to talk about on tap for today. So once again, just as a reminder, you're in the sports wagering zone. We're here. We're going to be back in a little over a minute. And welcome back. Welcome back to the Sports Wagering Zone. I'm Chris Pardo. Thank you very much for listening. We're coming to you live from Charlotte, North Carolina, as we do every day, Monday through Friday, 12 noon Eastern Time. Saturdays and Sundays, just a reminder for tomorrow, we come on at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. 11 a.m. Eastern Time on Saturdays and Sundays. Through the week, it's 12 noon. Okay, we looked at 2 games so far as the NBA games are concerned for tonight. The first game between the Knicks and the Hawks. The pros are on the New York Knicks, the underdog in that game. The Nets against the Celtics. Here they're on the heavy favorite, the Brooklyn Nets against the Celtics. Meanwhile, at 9:30 or somewhere around that time, that's Eastern Time, of course, the Los Angeles Clippers and the Dallas Mavericks. This is Game 3. This is a Western Conference first rounder. The Mavericks, they lead the series right now 2-0. They upset the Clippers in both games. They were road dogs in Los Angeles for both those games. So the Mavericks won the opener 113-103. They were 6-point dogs, so they won outright. And then they won Game 2, 127-121. Once again, they won outright as 7-point dogs. So in tonight's third game, and it's a big one, the Clippers opened as a 1.5-point road favorite. The smart money, the pros, have bet on the Clippers in the past, but it appears that once again, they're backing the Clippers again, as we've seen Los Angeles get bet up from being a 1.5-point to a 2-point favorite. Now, short favorites. Now, we're talking about a short favorite if it's 5 points or less, are 9-5 against the spread so far this playoff season, 64.3%. Okay? Now, the pro money has also come down on the total. It opened at 220 and has dropped down to 219, despite most of the bets taking the over. So this indicates that the pros, and with their money in action, they're being contrarian on the under in this game. So with Dallas up 2-0 in the series, the Mavericks are now a minus 250 as a favorite to advance to the next round. If you think Los Angeles can turn it around, the Clippers are a plus 200 to win the series. So that's the story on this game. As far as the pros are concerned, they do like the Clippers in this particular matchup. So that's the story. Once again, let me just recap those three games again. The Knicks against the Hawks, the pros are on the Knicks. Brooklyn Nets against the Boston Celtics, the pros are on the Nets. And Los Angeles Clippers against the Dallas Mavericks. In that particular game, the pros are on the Los Angeles Clippers. So that's the story as far as the NBA is concerned. But here's something of interest if you are interested at all. If you're looking to bet the games, let me just give you an idea as to what's been going on. Once again, just like with baseball, we have been following the pro line movement and seeing in which direction they were going. Yesterday, there were three games. We had the Bucks against Miami, the Suns against the Lakers, and we had the Lakers in that game, and we had Denver as an upset winner against Portland. So we had three plays yesterday. All three plays came in. Kind of give you an idea as to how well they've been doing so far. And since the playoffs began, we've had 15 plays. 15 plays and 13 winners. So just got to give you those numbers, give you an idea as to how good the pros can be at times, okay? So I give you those numbers just to give you an idea so that if you're looking at it, you say, I don't know, 15 and 13, 13 and 2. You know what? I think they've had it. I think they're overboard. Let me go against them in these three games, okay? Or you may be looking at it from the other perspective, saying, hey, they're hot. Sometimes when you're hot, okay? I'm going to bet with them. But again, just bringing it to your attention, it's up to you to decide which direction you want to go with them as well. So that's the story with the NBA. Now let's get together and talk about some baseball for today. The Giants against the Dodgers. That's the first game. Now in this game, you're looking at laying a lot of wood if you like the Dodgers in this game. If you kind of stay anywhere around 185, 180, if you can get in there at minus 180, minus 185, may not be a bad bet. But if you're going to wind up paying more than that, may not be such a great idea. But the Los Angeles Dodgers set to face the Giants with Walker Buehler pitching against Anthony DeSclafani. Okay, they're currently listed as the probable pitchers. Now, the Dodgers are the bet as far as the pros are concerned with the situation, but they're looking also a little closer to say that, if you're going to bet this game, you better bet it early. If you're going to take the Dodgers, okay, if you're looking to take the Giants in this game, wait as long as you can, because as that line climbs up as a contrarian value, you're going to be getting more runs, more better money line odds as far as that's concerned. But the pros in this game, they do like the Dodgers as well. But again, be prepared. You got to lay a lot of wood in that game. Marlins against the Red Sox. Cody Poteet is pitching for the Miami Marlins. And with the market consensus somewhere around plus 142 on the money line, we believe there's some good value in betting on the Marlins to upset the Red Sox in this game. So if you looking to bet some baseball today, Marlins against the Red Sox. Again, looking at the underdog, Marlins would be the play. Also, Braves against the Mets. The Braves against the Mets. You got the Hawks against the Knicks. So things are going on between New York and Atlanta. In this particular game, the Braves are facing off against the Mets. They got Ian Anderson and Taquan Walker currently scheduled to be the probable pitchers today. So, but with poor run support, the Mets will probably struggle against Anderson. And so we're looking, along with the pros, to bet on the Braves in this game. Now, they're the favorite, so take a look at that. You may not have to lay as much wood. They're somewhere about 140. If you get 140 or better, definitely the team to look at. Finally, we got the Cardinals and the Diamondbacks. In this particular game, we have, taking a look and see, the Diamondbacks are the choice of the pros in this game, and this is a pretty close game. You got Madison Bumgarner and Johan Oviedo. They're currently the projected starters for this game between the Diamondbacks and the Cardinals. Now, it's a very close game. It's very tight. The matchup is a toss-up. We're trying to adjust. If you adjust for home field advantage in this game, it's even more of a matchup than it is being away. So what we're looking at here is somewhere around 100 on the plus side or better with the Diamondbacks. So once again, we're looking at the underdog in the game, and that's the Arizona Diamondbacks as well. So that's the story as far as baseball is concerned. Those are the 4 games on tap with baseball. We have 3 games as far as the NBA is concerned. And once again, I just want to go over those games as well for you. The Knicks against the Hawks. The pros in this game are on the Knicks, okay? Nets against the Celtics. The pros are on the Nets. And, of course, the Clippers against the Mavericks. They kind of think the Clippers are going to bounce back in this one, and they like the Clippers in this situation. So that's a rundown of the various games on tap for today. Just kind of give you some thoughts and ideas on how to go with them. Now, once again, just want to tell you about the baseball while we're still talking about it before we take our final break and talk about the Zigzag Theory. So far this season, now yesterday we had 2 plays. We had the Indians against the Tigers. We had the Tigers in that game, and they lost, okay? And we kind of figured it was because Buehler was pitching for the Indians, but there's always that possibility with if you have enough money laying down as far as on the plus side, may not be a bad bet. Now, the Royals against the Rays, in that game we had the Royals as well. They both lost. So the Royals lost, Tigers lost. We had 2 plays, 2 losers. So far for the season, had 156 plays. We had 83 wins, 72 losses for a 53.2% average as far as a win percentage is concerned. So it's still very well into the profit column from the beginning of the season. So anyway, that's the story with that. Just want to remind you once again, if you have any questions, if you need any help with anything, by all means, just get in touch with us. We're over here. Send an email, send it to the Sports Wagering Zone at gmail.com. And also, we're talking about the little newsletter we're trying to put together as well. If you have any interest in that newsletter as well, be more than happy to hear your thoughts on that. And if you like it, just send us a quick email saying, yes, I'm interested. And at some point in time, if we do get this thing put together, we will let you know and give you that option as to whether you want to participate in the situation or not. Once again, that email address is the Sports Wagering Zone at gmail.com. The Sports Wagering Zone at gmail.com. So once again, thanks for listening. We're going to take our 3rd break, and when we come back, a lot of emails coming in about the Zigzag Theory. We kind of dropped it a few days ago. We kind of mentioned it, and people say, what the heck is that all about? So we'll kind of give you a quick primer on it. I'll do the best I can and try to explain it to you, and we'll do that right after this final break. And welcome back. Welcome back to the Sports Wagering Zone. I'm Chris Pardo coming to you live from Charlotte, North Carolina. Thank you very much for listening. We're on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network. And of course, you might be listening one of the podcast platforms as well. So thank you very much for listening. So again, just maybe 4 or 5 days ago, maybe even just a little before that, I don't remember exactly when, I happened to drop in and mentioned the word zigzag and gave you some results as of the zigzag theory. So, not realizing that most people may not be familiar with it because this actually started back in the 90s. So unless you're, old enough to remember that, you may not be familiar with the zigzag theory. So I thought, well, let me explain it. Of course, in the meantime, we did get a lot of emails, a lot of things, situations, talking to people. What's that zigzag thing you're talking about? So just to give you an idea, here's a quick rundown of what this is all about. Because the NBA playoffs are really going now. And this is the time of the year when you start hearing about the famous zigzag theory. Okay. Now, for those of you who don't know, this is also called the loser of the last theory. Loser of the last game theory, actually. So that says to bet straight up on the loser in its next game against the spread. Bet straight up on the loser of the game before in the next game against the spread. Now, this was really popular, and it was made popular by what was known as the goal sheet back in the 80s and the 90s. This was a tout sheet that was put out. It was gold because the zigzag theory really went, and it was very profitable, 311 to 249 against the spread, which is over 55%. Okay, that's from the 1991 NBA playoffs all the way through the year 2000. So for 9 years, 55.5% was the average. Now, as you look at this system, the logic behind it is that if a team, if they lose, they're going to make adjustments if they lose because they want to play with some added incentive, while a team isn't likely to make any adjustments if they do win the game before. Now, remember, there's also a school of thought that says longer series mean higher TV ratings. And of course, higher ratings, advertising revenue increases, the networks get more money, okay, and the NBA gets more money. And that kind of played into the zigzag success as well, because the trend became more well known with the advent of the internet as well. How we know that, okay? The effect the internet has had on the betting public is absolutely astounding. As is often the case with any kind of trend, especially one like this, it dried up as odds makers made the adjustments. Okay, once the odds makers see a trend going in a certain direction, they're going to adjust numbers because hey, they want to make a profit as well. Okay, it's been around 50% over the past 20 years, past 2 decades, yeah. And I hope we all know you have to hit 52 and a 3, 52.3%, of course, if you want to break even. So I kind of give you an idea. 50%, you're on the losing side. In fact, the zigzag was 15 and 25 against the spread last year. Okay, that's when I stopped keeping track during the second round. Of course, the 2020 playoffs were different. You know that they were different from others because it was played in a bubble. It was played in Orlando, Florida, because again, that COVID-19 pandemic. So I really believe we can throw those results out the window. I mean, last year, no matter what you're betting on this coming season, forget about last year. That's one of those outlier situations. It was totally different, whether it was baseball, whether it was football, whether it was basketball, whatever it was. The COVID-19 pandemic has something to do with the results and the data from last year. So while I certainly don't really believe that betting the zigzag just haphazardly or blindly anymore, I believe it's still relevant to really think about it if you're handicapping the games, especially since it still does have an impact on the way the odds makers set the lines, because plenty of people out there, they do bet the zigzag, the ones that are most familiar with it. Now, looking at the system, it doesn't kick in until game 2 of a series, since you obviously need a loser of a game to kind of focus on, so to bet on, right? So it started this postseason at 1-1 against the spread on Monday. The Heat, the straight up loser of game 1, despite covering against the spread, got blown out by the Bucks as a 5-point road underdog. Remember that. But then the Nuggets, outright losers of game 1, routed the Trailblazers as a 2-point home favorite. So the Zigzag went 1-2 against the spread on Tuesday, as the Lakers came back from their game 1 loss that they lost to the Suns. But the Celtics and the Clippers both lost their game 2s, their second games, to fall 0-2 behind the Nets and the Mavericks. Now, on Wednesday, the Zigzag went 2-1 against the spread to get back to 500 at 4-4, with the Knicks and the Jazz evening their series with the Hawks and the Grizzlies after they lost game 1, while the Wizards, they failed to cover against the 76ers. So if you're wondering what I meant about the zigzag theory still impacting the lines, despite most people don't seem to be involved with it anymore, remember that the Lakers were 2-point underdogs against the Suns in Sunday's game 1. But after losing, they were 2-point road favorites in game 2, because the odds makers and the bettors looked for them to bounce back. Here's another example. The Jazz, they were 8-point favorites when they were upset by the Grizzlies on Sunday, but then they closed as a 10-point favorite on Wednesday, and zigzag bettors were on the winning side despite having to lay a lot of points, the extra points that were added. Now, the favorites have been doing the best with the zigzag so far in this postseason, this season. They were 4-1 against the spread through Wednesday, while the underdogs haven't covered yet. They're 0-3 against the spread. Home teams were also doing better because they're 3-1 against the spread, while the road zigzags were struggling at 1-3 against the spread as well. Now, the zigzag plays for Thursday would have been the Heat plus 1.5 points against the Bucks, the Suns 6.5-point dogs against the Lakers, and the Blazers 4-point favorites against the Nuggets. So you can see if those trends have been really holding up. Now, on Friday's card for tonight, the zigzag plays would be the Hawks, 4-point dogs against the Knicks, the Celtics 7.5-point dogs against the Nets, and the Clippers 2-point favorites against the Mavericks. That's the Hawks 4-point favorites, against the Knicks. Now, as I said before, the zigzag isn't a system to bet blindly, but it's just another thing to factor into your handicapping method, whatever system you're using. So I recommended waiting to bet the Knicks in their series until games 3 and 4 in Atlanta, because they were better on the road this season at 63.9. That's almost 64%. Okay. We're hoping to get about 4 points, which gives us more wiggle room at that time. Now, as for Friday's other games, the Celtics are back home, but I'm passing on them again after the Nets beat them by 11 and 22 points in their first 2 games. And I was on the Mavericks in games 1 and 2, as you know, and I'm not about to lay points with the Clippers, no matter what the zigzag says. Now, on Saturday, you can get on board with the Wizards. They're 5.5-point dogs against the Sixers. The Grizzlies, 5-point dogs against the Jazz as zigzag home underdogs. The Bucks, Heat, Nuggets, Blazers, Lions weren't posted yet, so we don't know what's going to happen there. So see how those things turned out. See how the odds makers adjust the lines to see whether or not you're going to zig or perhaps you're going to zag, right? So that's the story. It's an old theory. It goes back to the 80s and the 90s. It really works only during the playoffs because, again, unless you have two back-to-back games, you have to have the game before that the two teams played against each other. And that happens, of course, in the playoffs, okay? Now, during the regular season, if you like the zigzag theory and you see what happens, if they're two back-to-back games, then what you have is see what happened in the first game and then kind of bet the loser of that game, okay, in the second game. So again, it's just one of those things. We want to bring it to your attention. That's what we're here for. We want to tell you about these different things and leave it up to you. Hey, you may take a look at it and say, it's not a bad idea. Maybe I'll implement it in whatever system you happen to be using. But anyway, it hasn't really done that well so far this postseason. And like I said, back then, it was a different time, different period. And of course, it worked very, very well for quite a while during the 90s and going into 2000. But then it kind of fell off and wasn't doing as well because the whole thing changes. There's no doubt about it. So that's the story there as far as the zigzag theory is concerned. I hope I did a decent enough job to try to explain it to you, try to give you some examples of how it works. And now we leave the rest up to you. Now, in the meantime, let's recap our selections that the pros have made for today. In basketball, the Knicks against the Hawks. They like the Knicks in that game. Brooklyn against Boston. They like Brooklyn. Clippers against Dallas, they like the Clippers. In baseball, the Giants against the Dodgers, they like the Dodgers. But again, you get ready to lay some heavy wood if you like the Dodgers to bet on as well. They like the Marlins over the Red Sox, the Braves over the Mets, and the Arizona Diamondbacks over the St. Louis Cardinals. So that's the story for today. It's Friday. It's fade the public Friday. That's what we call it. Okay. Anyway, that's the story. Thank you very much for listening. We're going to be back again tomorrow, Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Saturdays and Sundays, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Monday through Friday, we're here at noon Eastern Time. We're here on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network, as well as most of your major podcast platforms as well. So once again, thanks for listening. I hope you have a great day. Labor Day weekend. There's all kind of things going on. You got the big auto races going on as well. You can look into betting on those if you'd like. If you're looking for some more action, if the NBA, baseball, and hockey isn't enough for you, you've got racing to go along with. And of course, you still have golf on this weekend as well. So anyway, have a very great weekend. I hope you have a profitable one as well. But have a great weekend. It's Memorial Day weekend. Drive carefully. Be very cautious of what's going on out there so we can have you back here on Monday and Tuesday. Okay, thanks for listening. We'll be back again tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern Time on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network. So have a very beautiful, great weekend. And more than that, if you're betting, I hope you have a profitable one as well. So until tomorrow morning at 11, goodbye, everybody.